Great. Well, thank you very, very much. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you for that. Really inspiring. I'm really humbled and proud to be here. It's a great privilege to be able to talk at UC Berkeley and with the Citrus organization. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's a tradition now that I always say hello to my father, because I know this is streaming and it's on video, and he's many, many miles away in a different continent. So I do that now as tradition. I also want to, as I know it's on video, I want to make a note to my future self to allow lots of time to get to a conference at Berkeley. That's for Jonathan in the future. It's very impressive to be part of the first annual Data Innovation Day. Data clearly is a significant part of our world today, a significant driver in our economy going forward. So it's great to see an event like this. My presentation today is going to be about data in practice, right? What we are doing in a pretty high-profile city. We're a small city, but we have a significant presence in the world in terms of inspiring IT innovation from the companies that you know well and use every day as you go about your business. We're doing some pretty neat things at the city. We're trying to push the envelope of civic innovation every single day. It comes right down from our council to our city manager. So it's my agenda, and it's what I think about every single day as well. And we don't do it because it's hard or because it's easy. We actually do it because it's necessary, and it's the right thing to do. So let me tell you a little bit about our story. The current state of government and cities is well known to every one of you because you all live and participate in cities or under some form of American government. And we're at a difficult point. We're really at an inflection point. Right? We're at a point in which the cost of running government, for a whole number of reasons, vastly is outgrowing the revenue that's coming in. And so you've got to change that model. It's unsustainable. We know all about it at the federal level. I think you would all agree. But we also see that happening at the state and at the municipal level. We've got to change it. We've got to have new ideas. And I'm here to tell you that data is a big part of solving this problem. So let's just start with a simple problem statement. At Palo Alto, we want to know how can we deliver more innovative solutions. You could translate that to lower cost and more quickly. But transformational, things that our community now expects. The ability to interact with government through mobile devices. This is no longer a nice to have. This is an expectation. This is the base level. I think you're all people who actually, being here and the work you do, probably have that expectation yourselves. So here's my case study. Here's data in action and how we're addressing that. So this is your typical government source of data. It's tabular, right? You've got columns and rows. What we're looking at actually here is all the streets in the city of Palo Alto. They're not all on this one page, as you can imagine. But this is a sample of it. And often our city council and our commissions are asked to make decisions using data like this. This is really hard. You can't look at hundreds of pages of this and make decisions easily. Even when you look at data in aggregate, it's hard. But this is the history of how decisions are often made at the public agency level. So we had a brainstorming session, and we said, well, look, we see all this innovation happening in the private sector. You know, we're all now users of search engines, and we expect to be able to type in something and get some form of result. So our idea was, well, let's transform this into something more like this. And this is your very traditional Silicon Valley scribble on a piece of paper an idea, and let's see if we can make it happen. And that's exactly what that is. Right here you have more of a Google type interface. Type in the street, and let's get some information on the street. Right? This tabular format, if you look at the far right-hand side, what that number is the condition of every street in the city. So if there's lots of potholes and lots of cracks on the street, you're going to have a low number, close to 0, from 0 to 100. If it's close to 100, it means you got a good street. But it's hard to interpret this. So the idea was you type in the street, you get a picture of the street, and you get the number of the quality. And from that, perhaps we can start to make some decisions about investments, about infrastructure changes. It becomes, hopefully, more useful. Take data in its raw format and re-platform it to be useful. Now, the other question we have to solve is how do you do this quickly and at low cost? Well, it's very useful to have a university in your town. So we have Stanford at Palo Alto. So we walked up the street, myself and the mayor, and we joined a hackathon, a code jam that was happening. And here you see a photograph of myself, some of my colleagues, some students who were prepared to help us write an application to transform this into this. And so we fed them pizza and kept them entertained, and they stayed up all night coding. The mayor and I went home. We came back the next day, and I'll show you what they developed in one moment. But we have a culture that is apt for this type of thing. We are in a community around Silicon Valley where we have people who want to code and want to do interesting things. So this notion of Stanford having hackathon is not unique. We held one in our city. We called it Super Happy Block Party. It was co-sponsored by the city, but some other very enterprising organizations. And over the course of a day, we saw actually close to 2,000 people participate in art, software development, enjoying each other's company, some networking. By the way, if you've ever wondered what a hackathon looks like, this is about it. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but amazing things happen. Well, let's go back to our story, right? We had this napkin-based idea, got these young first-year and second-year computer science students at Stanford to work on this. And over the course of 24 hours, they were able to develop something that looked a little bit like this. And if you think about what this is, it's really data-driven. It's just an interface. On the front end here, we're using Google Maps, so we didn't have to use any photographs that we didn't have. And here you have the number of the street, and you have the quality of the street represented in the picture. Now, you can use that today if you want. If you're online, if you're watching this online, you can go to streetviewer.cityofpaloalto.org and type in any street in our town, and you can see the results there. Suddenly, data that was marginally useful became really useful. And we did this effectively at no cost. Right? Some hours, some my hours, the mayor's participation. So the question you have to ask yourself, and we ask ourselves, is, well, that's kind of neat. We took this data, we got these students, and we developed a useful application. The question is, how do you scale that? How can you do that every day? How can you make that the way in which government works, or a part of the function of innovating with data? And that's what we are trying to solve. Well, the first thing we realize is you can't walk up to a university with a thumb drive or walk up to a group of developers with thumb drives or computers and distribute data that way. You've got to have a centralized data platform. So it's not unique to Palo Alto, but we didn't have one of these. We said, we got to ramp this up. We got to get a data platform up and running so that people can access the data that we want them to innovate against. And thus, we threw together fairly quickly a data environment for the city. In fact, we built an API into the city. Pretty cool stuff. And you can visit this today, data.citypaloalto.org. I hear about organizations almost every day having meetups and different things where they use our data to experiment with, to do analytics, research, academic work, and in fact build applications without our intervention. That, to me, is the best case scenario. That participants in the private sector connect against our data and push forward with innovative solutions. Government gets out of the way and makes cool things happen. So now if you go to our platform, you can consume a whole lot of data this way. This is machine consumable. That's a big part of having an API into a city, right? But I guess this is just This wasn't a slide I put together. Sometimes you have to deal with what you have. This is a picture of the city of Palo Alto. Oh, at night. It does show all the permitting areas. So not only can you view the data in tabular format and consumable from the perspective of machines, right, and applications, but as a consumer, as a community member, as a citizen, you can consume the data through this beautiful visualization. Just go to data.citypaloalto to see this. Well, we put up a lot of different data sets. We put up demographic stuff. We started off with sort of low-sensitive data sets, translated, the easy ones, right? We put up a lot of GIS information. Governments accumulate masses of GIS information, and we do it quite well. We put up paths and hiking trails, information about our community events. This week, we put up data from our libraries. City of Palo Alto has 5 very popular libraries. And we put data up there that goes back to 1981. So my challenge to those in here and those viewing and those watching the video is what can you do with that rich data, that library data? You start to do some really interesting research. Lending behaviors, what people read. I've often thought, does the behaviors of what people read have any relationship to the world in which, the time in which they live? Is it different when we're in a recession versus when we're in good times? And we have the data to do that. I can't do that, but it's the kind of data that lets us start to answer really fascinating stuff about the behavior of our communities. Now, we want to take this to the next level. When we started talking about opening up our data at the city, one of the questions we got most often, and this is no surprise, is we want to see the finance stuff. We want to see where the city of Palo Alto gets its money, and we want to see where it spends it. And we want to see trends. And this is common across our country. Because when you start to have that, you can really begin to participate in your government. You can also get to have some insights into decisions that are made. They're not just taken out of the air. They're tough decisions every single day. And we don't want to do that as a government alone. The responsibility now spans much broader than that. When we talked about at the beginning the challenges of government, they're going to be solved when there's greater community participation in the running of our cities, counties, and states, and the country. So we developed another product working with an interesting startup called Open Budget, which was exactly for opening up our finance stuff. And here you get the sort of traditional tabular format, sure. So this is aggregated. You can click on these, expand them. You know, you can pry down into them. And I just want to remind you, this is the URL if you want to visit it. It's live now. But also, you can render the data in all sorts of useful visual formats. In this case, your traditional pie chart. And there's a little dial there in the bottom that you can see the trends. You can just move it and see how the funds change year by year. In addition, the data is all machine consumable. You can export all of it and bring it into your own app. Build your own financial analysis product. It'll be really interesting when people begin to come to city council meetings and show what they've done with the data and say, you know what, if you move this to here, look what happens. Or this could be a better decision if we do this with that. That's been very hard to do to date. We've had the data, we just haven't had it available. It hasn't been easily consumable. And this is what I think defines data innovation as we go forward. Now, the last item I just want to share with you is how do you do this quickly? And a lot of my colleagues, so I connect a lot with other IT leaders from other towns and cities, and we've had some success. We're happy about that, and we're happy to share it. They want to know, well, Jonathan, we can also get up an open data platform, but it's going to take us 18 months. How did you do it in 6 weeks? Right? So we have adopted the method that's often used for startups in Silicon Valley. It's a lean startup methodology. And I just want to share a little bit about that because this data innovation is not going to happen if it takes a long time. The value of data often declines over time. Right? In many cases, it can actually get richer. But if we're not acting on it and don't make it available soon, the value is lost day by day. So gather those basic requirements, We need an open data platform. Go live with minimal viable features. As I've studied sort of the history of cities in terms of technology, they've had great intentions. The idea is get a product that's perfect. Only go with the perfect product. Well, 3 years later, you're close to it, but you're 3 years later. Lean Startup says, don't go for perfection, go for minimal viable features. And you're getting feedback. You're getting feedback as you go along. That's how we did a redesign of our websites in the city of Palo Alto. We effectively said, we could spend years and years and years getting it right. And even then, we wouldn't really know until we went live. So let's go live and get feedback. But tell people you're going live with minimal viable features. Tell people it's an early version of the product. And then you iteratively improve. That's the basics of it. So let me just kind of sum up here in the time I've had. In our view, if you want to change the game from a technology perspective in the public sector today, you've got to be working on deploying an open data platform. It's foundational to data innovation. You're going to use that data to do co-creation with your community because you can't do it alone. You can't actually do this alone. When I say that, governments can't afford to do it alone. It has to be done with civic participation. Do it quickly. Do it quickly. And learn as you do it. So I know I'm not going to take any comments or questions, but I do want to say in the bottom right there is my Twitter handle. It's at Reichental, R-E-I-C-H-E-N-T-A-L, my last name, at Reichental. I would love to continue this conversation with anyone in this room or anybody watching or watching the video, because in my view, this presentation is the start of a conversation, not the end of one. So with that, thank you again. I'm so humbled. Thank you very much. Thank you.